Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Real Forno Show. We are starting today our SKOL Search series to talk in depth about Vikings potential prospects. And today we have a very special guest, the host of Locked On Vikings, Luke Braun, is joining us, and we're going to talk about the cornerback position, something that he and I have dove in pretty deep on. We're going to talk about the top guys, how the Vikings have approached the position, and what kind of things that Brian Flores will potentially look at the position. Stay tuned. Welcome to the Real Forno Show.
Welcome to the Real Forno Show. Managing editor of the USA Today's Vikings Wire. Betting and college football analysis for the Fantasy Points website. Publisher of Substack Run and Shooter. Host of The Good, The Bad, and The Hungry on the Voices of Wrestling Podcast Network, as well as a founding member of Vikings First and SKOL.
Welcome. We're going to have some fun here today on a Friday afternoon. I'm your host, Tyler Forness. With me this time in the bottom. Oh, I even got the finger point wrong, Dave, because you moved spots. You're in the bottom right corner this time. And to my left, I have this very special guest, the kid you used to copy off in math class, the host of Locked On Vikings, Luke Braun. How are you doing, my friend?
Hey, Tyler. Good to be on a show with you finally.
I know. We were just talking pre-show. The only time we were ever on a show together is you lost power on draft day, and Kellen Mond decided that he was going to ruin our lives.
Yeah, I was already having a bad day. And then they took Kellen Mond and then the guy I'd been clowning on for like a month in Chaz Surratt. And I was like, what are they doing?
It was a great way for Rick Spielman to go out. But one of the nice parts about this here today, Luke, is there is a very good and deep cornerback class, and the Vikings have a really flush need at the position. I want to kind of start off with this. How do you feel about the Vikings cornerback room right now? Not necessarily, we obviously know that they need more talent. How do you feel about the guys in the room, especially with the addition of Byron Murphy Jr.?
Yeah, so, and they'll get more talent. There are probably 10 people that'll come into camp, and they have 5 under contract right now. So somebody's coming, right? Mm-hmm. I really like Byron Murphy. I think he's going to be CB1, right? I think he can shadow good receivers. He can be that for the Brian Flores defense. And even, I mean, he's not like Darrelle Revis, right? He's not 2017 Rhodes, and that's okay. Just the fact that he can do that job and hold his own is really going to unlock a lot more that the Brian Flores defense wants to do. It can help hide other flaws. I think that was an absolutely huge pickup. And then I don't know if anybody else in that room like necessarily should be a starter. Like none of those guys have proven that they should be a starter, right? Andrew Booth was a catastrophe when he played, if he even stays healthy. Caleb Evans, backup quality corner, right? Maybe he takes a step forward and he becomes a starter. That'd be super sick. But again, he also has his concussion thing. That's a massive concern. So it's kind of Byron Murphy and then like depth. We need 2 more starters, man.
Yeah, and that's where kind of things get interesting. Obviously, the Vikings were unable to retain Duke Shelley as he signed with the Las Vegas Raiders. It sounds like the Vikings offered him $1.2 million and he got $1.3. But it also looks like when you look at their depth chart, he's going to start next year, which that is not something that he was going to be guaranteed with Brian Flores coming in.
Yeah, well, we'll see what the Raiders do too, because I think they have a similar problem. I think Duke Shelley should compete for a start. And I think he would have had the chance to do that here. I think he'll get the chance to do that in Vegas. And yeah, they just paid him an extra $100K. They get him. That's how it works.
Yeah, exactly. Let's kind of transition to the NFL draft. And Luke, you have done probably your most research on the cornerback position so far.
Sure.
And it is a position that I've delved into really deep. The top, we have similar opinions, but we also disagree. And I want to start on the guy we disagree on the most. And that's Christian Gonzalez. He's my cornerback one. I think he can do a little bit of everything. I want to see him a little better in press, but I also think that he's really good at it. And especially that game against Drake London 2021 when he was still at Colorado.
Yeah.
I thought that really stood out to me, and I know you had a chance to watch that too. Take us through Christian Gonzalez. Obviously, I know you still like him, but if I remember correctly, you don't like him for the Vikings.
Well, yeah, it's a fit thing. This is a Brian Flores thing. And so I don't think that he is a Viking. I also think that there is every chance in the world that he goes 5 to the Seahawks, and I don't think that they'd be wrong to do that. So don't mistake me for a Christian Gonzalez hater. It's just a scheme thing. And for me, it's not that he is scheme dependent. I think you could bring him into a man scheme and he would be a fine corner. I think there are better corners in this class for that. But Christian Gonzalez is a press bail god. That's the way that I have titled like everything I've made about him, is that he's a press bailer. And that is most at home in something like a Sean Desai cover 3. I think he could go 10 to the Eagles, and that would be super sick for them. That's the way Sean Desai did things in Seattle, and I think it's the way Seattle's going to continue to do things. It's a really good way to play when you're in an outside deep third defender. And it works in man too. You can absolutely play that way in man. You can be like Josh Norman that way. But I don't think the Vikings are going to use a lot of press bail. So if you're taking Christian Gonzalez and then you're not asking him to do the thing that he is like genuinely special at doing, feels like a weird fit. And we probably shouldn't. To get Christian Gonzalez, you would have to, pay out the wazoo, right? You'd have to trade up like you're going up for a quarterback. Why would we do that and then not ask him to do what he's best at? That feels like it would be a sort of a mismanagement. So that's where I'm at Christian Gonzalez. But if you are going to a team that uses press bail all the time, this dude instantly your cornerback one, day one, right off the bat, really exciting. There's other stuff. I mean, he's really bad at getting off blocks, and I know that's going to drive Brian Flores nuts. He talks about it all the time, that everybody's got to be able to shed a block, and Christian Gonzalez can't, which is like, okay, so he's not a Viking, but other guys won't care as much about that with a cornerback. And in press, it's good enough. He tries to be physical. He's just a hand layer. And that's more of that bugs me, but I think that's also something you can coach out of him. I think he just needs to get yelled at about it once or twice.
And that's definitely something that Brian Flores would be able to do if he were to come to the Minnesota Vikings. One guy we both love, he is my cornerback too, and I think he's your top guy, and that's Joey Porter Jr. And
he's my two.
I think he's your two. Okay, so the Ringer described him perfectly, and the Ringer, I think they lean a little too much into their shtick, but I thought this was brilliant from Danny Kelee. He plays like Joey Porter Sr. if Joey Porter Sr. played cornerback.
It was Danny Kelee. Oh my God. I've been saying that quote everywhere and I can never remember where I saw it. It was Danny Kelee.
Yep.
Yeah, it's perfect. He's a psycho. I love him. I think the funniest thing that he does, and it tells you everything you need to know about him, is he'll be in man coverage. It'll be a go route. Receiver's trying to release outside of him, right? So he's kind of squeezing it to the sideline, and he'll squeeze you all the way to the bench. He'll just push you out of bounds and be like, all right, well, now you got to reestablish you're not even eligible anymore. Good luck getting a throwing window now. You're on the white. And he does it all the time. The only thing that stops him from being CB1 for me is Devon Witherspoon's my CB1. And it's the difference between these two guys is that he is way too physical sometimes and he'll get flagged. I love physicality in corners. It's way more of a positive than it is a negative. He just pushes it too far and he'll get pass interference. He'll get 5 yards and an automatic first down. And so he has to dial that back. And I think the concern there, and I think this is a pretty low percentage outcome, but it is part of his kind of range of outcomes, is if you have to tell him to dial back his physicality, is he still going to be comfortable playing his game? Like, will he still feel like he's playing his brand of football if you have to say, hey man, you gotta cut it back a little bit? I only want him to cut it back a little bit. I just want him to not get flagged. Everything else is gorgeous. But if you say, hey, you whose identity is being physical, whose dad is Joey freaking Porter, hey, you want to soften it up a little bit? Like, that feels like that might be a hard note to get through to him. And if I'm a team thinking about drafting him, I'm asking my DB coach, hey, do you feel comfortable asking him to kind of back off the identity of his game? And I think it's totally fair if my DB coach says no, okay, we'll go draft somebody else. But it's a very, very minor thing. And even if you don't do that and you just say, all right, this dude's just going to get penalized sometimes, but he's awesome, you still take that. So he's my CB2 for the Vikings. So, this is Viking specific. I don't know if he goes higher than Christian Gonzalez. I think that's much more of a which team's on the board kind of thing than it is which cornerback's going to have a better career, who's going to have better career AV. I don't care. It's about, get guys who do what you wanted guys to do.
And I think that's what makes this cornerback class so intriguing is because there's so many different types and they're all so good. I have fully scouted 12 cornerbacks. All of them have at least a high third round grade. This class is just absurd. And I haven't even gotten a chance to look at guys who are probably going to go in round two. Two questions about Porter, then I want to talk about Witherspoon here real quick. If you were to get him in your room, how would you handle him? Would you handle him similar to the way Zimmer handled Xavier Rhodes? Do the whole boxing glove gimmick?
Yes.
Or is that even in like because he's so physical? Like I don't see him being super grabby. He's just gonna beat your ass.
Yes. So, well, he is grabby. He does definitely. He's got a lot of holding penalties. Gosh, what was the game? I want to say it was Ohio State. One of the games he got like 4 holding penalties in a row. It was disgusting.
It
So
was
yeah,
probably
I would
Marvin
love to
Harrison
do.
Jr.
Maybe I can't remember. I could go back and look it up. But one of the games he absolutely like he just about threw a whole drive. Um. So yeah, I love the boxing gloves thing, and I think it's a matter of I would want like if I'm his DB coach, I want to teach him when to be physical. I don't want to tell him, "Hey, maybe be a little less aggressive," because that's not specific enough. Like what do you do with that? Okay, do I push him but just a little less? Do I push him one less time a game? When is that less time? I want to tell him when to be physical. I want to kind of make sure, okay, your hands are in your pockets the second you're past 5 yards. Be in his way, be a big body, you're a strong dude, take the charge, right? I'm going to play a little one-on-one basketball with him and start getting a whole bunch of offensive fouls on him, right? Teach him how to take the charge. That's the way like if I were trying to coach him, I would try to say, start teaching him how to pick his spots and say, this is an amazing brand of football and I love it. You be you. But just know where you're at on the field, know what the ref is looking for you. I want you to try to get away with as much as you can, but we got to find what the appropriate situations are. I guess that's the note that I would give, but I'm not a DB coach. I'd probably make a really bad one. So I don't know.
All right. Last question on Porter. Do you have any concern with the fluidity in his hips? Because he looks to me to be a
I don't
little
think
bit
so.
stiff, but I don't think it's that big of a concern.
I don't think I noticed anything like that. I gotta go back to my notes. Maybe I wrote something down. They're somewhere around here, or did I not write them? Oh no, here it is.
I guess when I
I
watched
don't
him,
think
because
so.
I watched him after Gonzalez and Witherspoon, and I noticed a pretty decent gap between him and the other two.
I didn't clock it in at any point of being a problem. So there's that. Although I didn't clock it as a positive either. I just didn't write anything down about it.
Mm-hmm.
But I will say that now that I'm looking at my notes, you can actually see him getting coached in the middle of games. There was something. It was versus Purdue. They attacked him with a bunch of slants. He changed how he was doing his first step in press, and he punished the hell out of him for it.
Mm-hmm.
That was sick. And so you can kind of say, okay, if I need to teach him something, you can see him like taking a note and incorporating it on the fly. And that means, all right, I can mold this dude into whatever I need, and kind of assuages that concern that I talked about before. And he's smart too. That's the other thing. He's not just a total, like, he's not the Hulk, right? He's Banner and the Hulk. He's like when they merged together at the end in Endgame.
Yeah, he's something, and it helps that his dad has a couple Super Bowls to his name. Let's transition to the guided missile himself, Devon Witherspoon. This dude plays football like a psychopath, and he's so great. He's my cornerback 3, but he's separated by 0.3 away from both Gonzalez and Porter Jr. So I still love him. Well, what separated?
Here's your top 3, right? That's these are the 3 guys that should go. If anybody else goes above one of these 3, somebody's getting a steal. What I love about him is he has an incredible understanding of spacing. And that's too vague, so let me explain what I mean there. He uses really aggressive shades. When he lines up with an inside or an outside shade, his inside foot is on your outside foot. His inside shoulder is on your outside shoulder. Like, he is a whole body outside of you. Most corners will only do half a body, where his foot is lined up with your face mask. So it's really aggressive. That's a lot of extra space. He has the mobility, and he has really good feet his back pedal is great, and in particular, his shuffle step is great. When he's shuffle stepping, he can make up that extra space if you're punishing him. Because the advantage there, let's say you line up with a really aggressive outside shade, you're outside the receiver. If the receiver is going to release to your outside, you have a head start, right? So you're doing great against go routes. If they release to your inside, and usually he does an inside shade to kind of be the opposite of this, if you have an inside shade and it's really aggressive and they're running a slant, you have that head start. So he will use that inside shade. He'll never get beat on a slant just because he's lining up there. And if they do release outside him, well, the sideline's over there and it's probably a go route. And he has really good footwork where he can kind of make it up. The hip transition's fantastic. He can make up that ground and get all the way back in phase, even though he's started at a disadvantage because of how aggressively he aligned himself. And this is in press too. In off coverage, it's even easier. And it's in particular, he loves that shuffle step. He loves it so much, maybe a little too much. But I certainly wouldn't try to change that about him because it makes his game really, really, you either have to play right into his technique or you need to try to beat him at when he's doing what he's best at. And there really isn't another choice. And it makes him really, really, really effective. Plus, you have physicality, all of that other stuff. You've got everything you want in a corner. His size is good enough. He's a half inch under 6 foot. I don't want to hear about how he's too small. I love him. He's my CB1, and I think people are overthinking him a little bit.
Do you think they're overthinking him because of the size disparity between him, Porter Jr., and Gonzalez? Because Witherspoon's
I think
there's
like 2 6'2" guys.
Yeah.
There's 2 6'2" guys. And so the 5'11.5" guy, you're going, I don't know. I might put him over that. If this dude falls past the top 10, it's a coup.
Yeah, he's pretty incredible. Now, once you get past these top 3, there's a glut. I would say it's about 8 guys that could potentially go as that 4th spot. And a couple of those guys we're going to talk about here because I know you've had an opportunity to watch at least some of them. One of them being also another one of those bigger guys, South Carolina cornerback Cam Smith, who was my cornerback 4. He's interesting.
I think I have him there too. But I've only watched a little bit of him. I have him as the only other corner I've seen so far. I have not finished with Deonte Banks. I think I'm going to end up putting him in this category too. But he's there's those 3, Cam Smith, and then probably Deonte Banks I would take at 23, and everybody else I would either trade down for, or maybe they're lower. But that 5 corners that I would take in the top 23 is a lot of corners. And it's really likely, if you look at all the mock drafts, it's usually all of them have at least one of these guys available. But I like, he's big body, physical. There's I don't see like a huge weakness on him, but I also am very much not done with him yet. I've only watched 1 game and I think I lost my notes from it. So I don't even remember a lot.
Yeah. Smith is physical. He's obviously very long and he loves to attack at the catch point. What really impressed me about Smith was how fluid he is and how just seamlessly he moves in the open field. Something that I think you see a lot with Gonzalez and Witherspoon. He can just flip his hips and then just drive to the football with ease. And I think that's why he's so intriguing, especially when you consider he's also 6'2", 200 pounds.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Yeah. I think what I need to look for, and I don't know the answer to, maybe you do. What I need to look for is, okay, why isn't he being put in the same category? Is it just that all these other guys, Gonzalez has this press bail that looks like it's, straight out of Josh Norman's tape. Devon Witherspoon has his shuffle step that looks so great. Joey Porter's got this physicality and these like elite traits, and Cam Smith maybe doesn't have like his elite fastball that everybody gets really excited about. But as a corner, you don't need one of those. You can be a very good starting cornerback, which is very much a 1st round pick, by just being a little good at everything.
And I think that's kind of what it is. There is no really one thing that stood out for me about Smith. He does love to attack the football, but yeah. And if the other 3 weren't in there, I think you could be hearing a lot of people talk about him as cornerback 1. The one that really surprised
in a normal
me,
class.
Yeah, the one that really surprised me, and I know you watched a little bit of him, so I want your initial thoughts, is Deonte Banks. I talked to Dane Brugler when Brugler put him in his 1st round. I'm like, hey, I know nothing about this guy. What do I need to watch to get a sense of him? He told me Wisconsin and Ohio State. So I watched those games. This dude like has no fear whatsoever. And he and Marvin Harrison Jr., I don't know if you've watched that game yet. They went to war,
I'm like,
and Banks wasn't a loser.
yeah, I'm like 3/4 of the way through that game, and then I watched his Michigan game, which wasn't as good. Yeah, there's a lot of physicality to like, and a lot of. I think what I'm finding with Banks is that every time he loses, I'm really it's very forgivable, because like corners will lose sometimes, just taking the wrong step off the release, and that's kind of a guessing game. Like if the receiver releases super hard, like Jefferson gets corners on this all the time. He'll do like a really hard step outside, and then it's actually an inside release, and the corner just has to step with that, and it's just a matter of making that dude be more agile than a human can be because he's Jefferson.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes you're trying to preempt that kind of thing, and you'll guess. You'll say, I think, look, it's 3rd and 4. They love to run slants on this. I think he's going to do an outside step and then an inside. So I'm going to take my first step outside. And then it turns out that they're running something else. And you get totally beat, right? And it's like, okay, I totally forgive that because you had a plan. You were trying something. You lost the game of rock, paper, scissors, but I don't think that like shows a trait about a cornerback that concerns me, right? When a trait about a cornerback that concerns me is if they can't get into their hip transition fast enough, they get run past, or if they panic when they're out of phase and they start holding, that's a concern. But you took an outside step when he took an inside step and you got beat. Like, man, I don't know. You called heads and it was tails. Like, whatever.
Yeah, and I'm kind of the same way. I think Banks' aggressiveness serves him really well, but he can also get a little too aggressive. And I think kind of how you spoke with the releases, it shows a little bit. I'm excited to hear your full thoughts once you get there.
Yeah, he thinks he knows what he's going to see, and then if he's wrong, he like commits really, really hard to it. Maybe that's the deal. And I got my notes up here about him somewhere. Oh, I don't have them. No, yeah, I've got 4 plays from the Ohio State game that I've taken down, so I've got a lot left to go on that.
Oh yeah, you're fine. I know a couple guys that you've also watched. One of them is Clark Phillips. I gave him a first-round grade initially, but I dropped him slightly below that once I saw the combine testing because I thought, man, like,
oh yeah, he did bad, didn't he?
Yeah, if we're gonna trust this guy on the outside, I need to see a little more, and I think he's probably a slot only at this point. I didn't think so on film, but you're facing a different caliber of receiver once you get to the NFL.
4.5, 33 verticals bad for corners, right? Especially at a $184. So he's a tiny guy that's not very athletic, or isn't testing as very athletic. Yeah, I think that sounds slot only to me for sure in terms of body type. Although I'm going to be one of those guys where if I see him play outside, you can play outside. I don't care if you're built like a Smurf. If you can play outside, you can play outside. But what I want to see is how does he press? And I have not watched him very much, so I don't really have a great answer to that. But can he influence you on press, or is he a hand layer like Christian Gonzalez is? And can he take that charge, right? One of the cooler things about watching Devon Witherspoon play is when it's time to get through him, because sometimes he'll just, especially if it's like zone or if it's off man, he'll just like park himself where he thinks your route is supposed to break off, and you got to go through him for that. Or he'll get, if you're trying to break through his leverage, it's really hard to get through him because he's just a brick wall of a dude. So
and he weighs 181.
He does, yeah. So yeah. I thought he weighed in like 190. Doesn't 10 pounds, whatever. Yeah. But like you can see guys really struggling to get through Devon Witherspoon. And so I'm looking for that with Clark Phillips as well. What happens when it's time to get through him? Does he step out of the way because he's too small and he knows he can't do it? Does he take the charge? Does he slow you down? Does he grab and get panicky? How does that work? I'm looking for that play with him. And I don't remember that I've found one yet, but I've only just started him. And I think if you see, all right, guys can just get through him and it doesn't work, then you go, all right, this dude's a nickel. But we live in a world where everybody's got 3 wide receivers. Nickel is no longer a rotational position you only take in the 5th round or with a $2 million guy. If you're a starting nickel corner, you're playing 80% of snaps. And I think if you take that in the bottom of the 1st round, top of the 2nd round, that's I think you're getting fine ROI on that. For a nickel corner. I can't stand the reputation that nickel corners have is just like, you can kind of just put whoever. It's like, man, these guys matter a lot. And if you watch the Vikings defense last year, the way teams really approached and attacked Chandon Sullivan. You can watch the same
Yeah.
thing happen to the Packers in 2021 with Chandon Sullivan. You can mark that slot corner and you can absolutely make the defense's lives hell, no matter who else is on it, if you can attack that slot corner. So him being slot only, if that is the case, and it feels like probably with that athleticism, doesn't drop him very far down my board. You drop him a little over it, but I'm not putting him out of the second round for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. One guy I want to ask you about, and then we're going to get into probably the biggest wild card of this whole cornerback class. Have you watched any of Emmanuel Forbes from Mississippi State yet?
No, I have not. But I'm aware of the fact that he weighs less than I do.
Yeah. So I really want to hear your context of it, and like once you get there, but I do have this question for you. We know he weighs 166 pounds. He's about 6'2". Like, he is thinner
Oh
than Cam
God.
Dantzler. Yeah.
Yeah. He's
He
gonna
is.
break in half.
Yeah, but he's survived physicality in the SEC. He had 6 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, with 3 of them for touchdowns this year. He's an incredible ball hawk with a lot of length. Just based on kind of that general profile, like, are you that concerned with the weight, considering he survived in the SEC and played extremely well? But obviously, tape is going to fill in all that context for you. But just
Sure,
kind of
but what are
based
you
on the
looking for?
profile, yeah. Like, what do you think of just the general profile before diving into the tape?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, I haven't watched a snap of him, but here's going to be my operative question. And this goes for everybody with like an athleticism concern, right? Because I think we
mhm,
very often will look at it, we'll say, well, small corners tend to get injured. So I'm going to move him down my board because I think he's going to get injured. So, well, no. They tend to get injured, but will he, right? Because some guy, Antoine Winfield existed too. There are ways to do it. But what Antoine Winfield had was something very specific, and you have to see if this guy also has it. So it's kind of like Clark Phillips. I'm looking for, can he stop a receiver from getting through him? Especially, I'm looking in the run game. Does he fill in? Does he go attack a B gap? Can he stand up to somebody? Can he tackle, or do guys just blaze right through him? When you think of like a skinny corner, what is the problem that you think that brings up? Okay, that's a valid thing. Does he have that problem, or does he just have a number, but he plays like he's 190? That's what I'm looking for when I'm going to look for him, is where does the size get him? Looking at, there's another one, Byron Murphy, right? We just signed him. Not great top end speed. I think he ran like a 4.55 or something like that. So I'm looking for, okay, are there times where he transitions perfectly, he gets into phase, and then he just sort of loses space over the course of a longer developing route? And the answer is yes. There are times where that, okay, so there it is. So that 40 actually matters for him. But for some guys that ran a bad 40 and you never see that, okay, I don't think I care about the 40, because the actual effects of that are not bearing out. We have to think like practically about this stuff, and what is the actual effect that this stuff is supposed to have on the field. That's what we care about, right? You don't get a handicap because you got too many guys who ran over a 4.5 on your secondary. That needs to be punishable. Is it punishable? Are we seeing it get punished? That's what I'm looking for with Forbes. But I know that like he does have those problems a lot. I've at least heard that he does have, when physicality gets involved, you can see that he weighs $165, and so that's probably going to be something that bugs me.
makes sense. Now let's talk about the elephant in the cornerback class. His name is Kelee Ringo.
Oh boy.
This dude has all the ability in the world, but he kind of runs
Does
like
he?
a stiff board. Well,
he has one ability.
So I know you watched the Kentucky game, and one thing that stood out to me is the first play of the game, Will Levis is backed up at like the 2-yard line, just throws a dime over his head, and Ringo's just oblivious. Then later on in a different drive, he's playing like a cover 2 shell, and then just like in his bail technique ends up getting the interception. But he tested off the charts.
Really
his
nice.
hips look so stiff. But when you kind of combine the whole package, it's, do you want to take a chance on this guy potentially being a great corner? Because this guy is a top 100 prospect of all time, according to 24/7 Sports. Like, there's stuff to work with. Do you think he can ever get there? And I think we both have the same answer.
Well, I mean, anything can happen, right? He can maybe learn how to do stuff better, but all we have is what problems he has right now, right? So who he is right now is, he's fast. He's straight line speed. Extremely concerned that he jumped a bad vertical, because that confirms what I saw on tape, which is a lack of general explosiveness. And as a corner, you need to be able to decelerate and accelerate very, very fast. One of the things that they'll teach you when you're in man coverage is when he breaks down, I break down. So if I'm running with you and I'm in phase and I see you start to sink your hips, my hips sink. And, when your feet start chopping, my feet start chopping. I'm going to just start doing whatever you're doing. And when you see Ringo do that, for one, he doesn't know how to control his speed. He will run. He'll beat guys over the top of the route by 4 yards and then give up a curl around underneath. Why are you running that fast? Take a load off of it. And then he's going so fast that he's not able to decelerate smoothly. So it takes him, a wide receiver, when they're running a curl or a comeback, they'll take 3 to 5 steps to really get down. It takes Kelee Ringo like 9 steps. And if you want to see the worst example of this, it's the Ohio State game, where they knew this about him. And it was the playoff game. They knew this about him, and they abused it. And they had a great day on the outside. Made CJ Stroud look awesome in that one against the scary Georgia Bulldogs, right? That bothers me a lot. And so when I watched him before the combine, and I said, okay, so either this is a technique thing. Maybe he just needs to learn how to do his feet better. Maybe he just needs to learn to take a little bit off the top of his speed so he doesn't have to work so hard to decelerate. Maybe there's that. Or does he just not have short area athleticism? Maybe he is just a sprinter and he just doesn't have that sort of agility and that stuff. Well, he didn't run the agility drills and he had a crappy vertical. I don't think he's a very explosive guy. So a corner is great when he can run in a straight line, but corner's about so much more than that. I got this dude in the 3rd round, and he's 7th on my incomplete list of cornerbacks right now. I don't like it. I don't think that that's a package that I want to buy into just because of a 40 time,
So we do have agility testing. I think he might have done it at Georgia's Pro Day.
Did he? Oh, do we have that?
Yep. RAS. Our buddy JJ2K is Josh Oliver stand in the Discord. 4.28 in the short shuttle, 51st percentile. 3 cone is 7.21 seconds, 23rd percentile. So I think you're spot on. This guy is a sprinter. Those are bad. Those are really
That's
bad.
awful. Yeah. Nope. I am out. I think a lot of people were really excited about him with I just saw it. Thank you to Skak Mastio. I never know how to say it. But yeah,
master.
Yeah, Abby. Man, that's rough. Yeah. He's a big giant trap. And I think people got really excited about the fact that he's fast and he was CB1 for Georgia. But he's a big old trap. That piece of cheese with that metal bar over it, that's not a great idea.
Yeah. Have you watched any other corners at all before we kind of wrap up here?
Who haven't we talked about? No, I have Rezjon Wright on as a 3rd rounder on my thing because I really liked what he did against I think it was Jordan Addison, but I only really watched that one game and I was focusing more on the.
Because I think he's a zone guy.
Physical, I've only watched the one game against him. Yeah, a little bit of I think I saw him play enough off man where I liked him. But I only have seen one game of his, and I was only really paying attention to Jordan Addison on it. So I wasn't watching him that closely, and that's very subject to change. That could go up or down 2 rounds depending on what else I see.
Yeah. Well, I'll give you a couple recommendations to watch if you end up having time. You need to watch the Kansas State kid, Julius Brents. He's built like Richard Sherman. But
he's on the list.
Oh, I bumped, like, once I saw testing.
You have a 1st round on him, right?
Yep.
Nice.
I love him.
Tyreek Stevenson.
He has a great. He played really well against Quentin Johnston in the Big 12 championship game. Got a pick off of him in the end zone. Half of that was Max Duggan's fault because Max Duggan is probably a worse passer than Taysom Hill.
I think
And
he's a
then
backup for the Seattle Sea Dragons.
yeah, pretty much. Darius Rush, the other South Carolina corner, who is one of my favorite
Yeah.
prospects in this class. His Senior Bowl opened my eyes to him because I didn't know a lot about him. This dude loses, like, it feels like half of his reps like initially, and then he has the athleticism and speed to go attack the football and win the rep
Oh, he's a
anyways.
Trey
He's
Waynes.
but he's better. Like, he's way more fluid than Wayne's. Wayne's was a guy that he pretty much stood straight up.
Well, yeah.
Rush
Losing for a
Rush
different
can
reason.
ball. Yeah. And then last one is Stanford's Kai Blue Kelee. His dad
Yeah.
was
Oh,
Brian.
I've been trying to get to him forever.
His dad is Brian Kelee, who is the slot corner for the Bucks for their Super Bowl win in 2002. Really good football player. Those are three guys I think you would enjoy.
Yeah. Yeah, man. There's so many guys, and that's why, like, you know, if they, because I think the Vikings are trying to go up for a quarterback, right? And if, let's say, that strikes out and they're all gone by, you know, pick 9, and you never had a shot, or somebody else trades up and they take, you know, the Washington package instead of yours, there's kind of nothing you can do about that.
Yeah.
I'm immediately starting to call teams in the top of the second round and saying, what are you going to give me to move up? Because I want 2 second-round picks, and I want 2 of these corners.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of guys. Trey Hodges Tomlinson, LaDainian Tomlinson's nephew. He is literally like one of the smallest players ever, but he also has ball production better than literally everybody in this class, which is really, really weird. This corner class
is drills, like, or is he boxing guys out?
Yes, he's doing both of them.
He's boxing dudes out as a little point guard, like that.
I think he jumped 41.5 inches. Like, he's a leaper. Yeah.
All right. Let's go.
He's very interesting. And then DJ Turner, the Michigan kid, ran the 4.26. And then he's also got some physicality to him too.
Right.
So
yeah, I really liked what he did against Quentin Johnston when I was watching Johnston. He's number 5 on Michigan, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I liked what he did there. He got sunned on, like, the biggest highlight of the game with the missed tackle when Johnston, like, housed that long crossing route. But he had Johnston was struggling for a lot of that game against him.
Yeah, this corner class is ridiculous. But Luke, Friday afternoon, greatly appreciate you coming on and just talking some ball with me. Obviously, most of the people watching probably know where to find you, but let's go shout out your stuff anyway. Make sure they know where they can find your great content.
Yep. You can find the Locked On Vikings podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. You can find it on YouTube as well. You can find my Patreon, patreon.com/Luke Braun NFL, where I have a lot of the stuff that I've said here backed up by film. I'm showing you exactly what I mean. Doing the Madden thing, drawing on it. You can also find the history doc there, 7 parts, whole season of TV, basically 7 hours of Vikings history content you can find there. You can find the Locked On NFL podcast as well. I'm on there on Tuesdays.
Perfect. Dave, you got anything for Luke before we head out?
Yeah, I got a question. Since we do not have a true nickel on the team, do teams look for a specific, they look at corners, but do they look for a specific trait or traits that they go, that guy's going to be good at nickel? Because mainly when we're looking at the draft, we're looking at the top corners, and they all play outside and they move inside. It's like tackles moving into guard, right? Half the tackles that are drafted go to guard.
Yeah.
Is there something they're looking at going, that guy would be a great nickel?
Yeah, there's stuff that I think will tell you, okay, he can play in the slot, right? And I think the best one is, does he? Because there's a lot of guys in college that will shadow around. Do they play in the slot? Don't they? Right? We saw Byron Murphy at Arizona. He played outside. He played in the slot. Depending on where the guy he was shadowing was lined up. He could do all of it. So there's that. I think in terms of traits themselves, it's really, I think the biggest difference is on the release. Once you're in phase or out of phase, it's all kind of, then you're just following a route. But I think on the release, when you're outside, you have the sideline. And some guys, like what I talked about with Devon Witherspoon, are really good at taking advantage of that. Xavier Rhodes was phenomenal at taking advantage of that sideline because he would be able to squeeze that space really well. So you don't want to take that guy and put him in the slot because you're kind of robbing him of one of the things that he uses to his advantage, and you're kind of putting him in hard mode. Some corners don't do that, though. Some corners just don't have that sideline thing. So you put him in the slot and it doesn't matter. And then there are some guys that really need to rely on having a lot of room on them. Like some guys that just don't press as much, or if they do, it's like inconsistent or whatever. And those guys I get a little worried about in the slot because of slants. But it's really like, are they playing reactively, I guess, to releases, maybe is a better way to put that. Because in the slot, there's a lot of quick game that comes out of the slot. So are they guessing and then they'll lose to that quick game? Or are they saying, all right, you take an outside step, I take an outside step. You take an inside step, I take an inside step. You try to shuffle your way into my face, I shuffle my way 2 yards back. And that can be a lot better against quick game. Or if they're a really good press jammer, where they can, I think Deonte Banks would make a good slot for this reason, because he can get into your face and get a really good influence on you. That really helps in the slot. It helps outside too, but I think it's particularly important in the slot, where a lot of those condensed things are a little bit more impactful. Everything's a lot quicker and a little bit more timing based. So influencing, getting a good jam on you is a big deal. And I think it varies from there a lot more defense to defense. With Brian Flores, they might not have a dedicated nickel. They might have a CB1 who covers their best guy, a CB2 who covers their second best guy, and a CB3 who covers their third best guy. And offense, you get to decide where everyone is because all our guys can play everywhere. I think that's ideal, where everybody can play everywhere and you don't have like just a Chandon Sullivan who's the guy in the slot. And if you're Stephon Diggs can play in the slot, you get Diggs versus Chandon Sullivan all day, right? You don't want to be exposed to that. So I guess that's my question, my answer. A little rambly there, but yeah, it's
well, I'm wondering.
I think the best indicators
symmetry in the way they move, right? A lot of people are
symmetry. Yeah, it's a great word.
Right-handed tendencies. Others are left. Right? They like playing that sides. We get that arguments on the offensive line all the time. He can't switch sides. Well, it depends on the individual. Are they looking for how well they move left to right? Is there a difference in if you run a bunch of routes that cut left on the corner, how he reacts, how quickly, versus running a bunch to the right, how he reacts, how quickly? If those numbers are about the same, I think that's good for the slot, because the slot is going up against a receiver could go any direction. Right.
Yeah. Alignment versatility is huge for every corner. And notice I did not say height. I think every time we see a corner who's under 6 foot, we go, that guy's a slot. And I think that's very wrong and oversimplified. So if that's your instinct, you should try to work that out.
Just look at Duke Shelley.
Right.
That's
way worse in the slot.
That's your barometer right there.
Yeah. Well, hey. And because he used space a lot and he used the sideline to his advantage a lot, the outside and he played on the field side too, which made things a lot easier for him.
Yep, absolutely. Well, Luke, thank you very much for joining. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in on this beautiful Friday afternoon where it is somehow still sunny in Minnesota and my snow is melting. I'll take that every day of the week. From Luke, Dave, I'm Tyler. Dave, what do we say on this show?
As always, SKOL Vikings!
SKOL Vikings.
Like, subscribe, and ring the bell to get notifications. It helps us grow this community that we all love, our Minnesota Vikings. And on behalf of Tyler Forness and myself, Dave Stefano, thank you so dearly for watching The Real Forno Show. SKOL, everyone!